Are we live streaming yet? Streaming? Live streaming? What are you kids going to go out and do today? Oh, I don't know. Going to go live stream? Just be back for dinner. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm Marijuana Man, and this is, as always, From Under the Influence. And I am, and we are, and this is Dana Larsen joining me today.
Hello.
Welcome to the desk.
It's been quite a day today.
It has been quite a day.
It's not even 4:20 yet.
Yes. Earlier today, Dana closed up one of the dispensaries that has been here for 11-ish years now or something.
About 10 and a half years, yeah.
So what the hell is going on?
Well, we weren't the only one to close today. Weeds closed 4 or 5 of their locations. The Green Cross closed their place. They were the second dispensary to open in the city over 10 years ago. Who else closed today? Karuna also closed today as well. And several others have closed over the last couple of weeks. It's this court case we've been fighting against the city of Vancouver. About 24 dispensaries teamed up, and we had this case with the city. We were arguing 2 points. We were arguing whether the city had the right to regulate dispensaries, especially the bylaws that were written before legalization, and we were questioning about medical access and whether patients had enough access with the legal system and whether we were still needed to keep supplying patients who can't get regular cannabis or medical cannabis. And the BC Supreme Court didn't really talk about the medical issue, but they said the city has the power to regulate us, and they gave the city the power to seek an injunction based on contempt of court. And so we were at the Supreme Court, and they're hearing our appeal, and they're still hearing it, but we asked them, can you put a hold on any injunctions or contempt of court stuff until you've made a decision on this appeal? And they said no. So that means the city then had the power to enact this contempt of court stuff. And getting stopped for contempt of court is very different than getting charged for like selling marijuana or something, right? A contempt of court charge can mean immediate jail time, no trial, no hearing or nothing. It can mean fines in the hundreds of thousands of dollars that they can get that money much easier than the city can with their fines they do. It could, and not just for me, but for my employees and my staff there and that. And I'm very much inclined to be the kind of person who says, well, I'll just send everybody home and I'll work here all day and they can come and arrest me if they want to. And I was willing to do that. I mean, I was nervous about the idea, but I was willing to. But after talking to our lawyer for quite a while, he sort of explained that, you know, unless I'm there every single day by myself, also other people are going to have to be around and they are equally liable, that they could block me from entering into the whole downtown east side if they wanted to. They could immediately jail me. And, you know, if they put me in jail for running a medical dispensary, it would certainly get a lot of attention and to the issue. And, you know, I don't think they want to do that. But it just, and also we got our location at Thurlow. That location's got a development permit and is in the process. And the city was like, well, we're going to take away that at Thurlow as well and shut you down there if you don't comply over here. And so it's a challenging situation.
Really? They said that
right?
to you?
Yeah, they were threatening our other spot, and you know I want to be able to keep serving people, and having at least one spot still open for now is you know better than nothing, right? But we're still open at 880 East Hastings. We're just not selling cannabis anymore. People are still coming in. When I left earlier, several people were coming in trying to buy and being told sorry. But we give them a discount coupon for our other spot on Thurlow and encourage them to go over there. But
it's absolutely insane. The whole scenario, particularly with your shop and where it was and how it's being restricted. And, you know, it's just so silly how they always talked about the Raycam Center, which is a community center just a half a block down the corner.
That's not even the problem, though. Raycam would write a letter saying they like us, right? It is an issue. We'd have to go to the Board of Variance over Raycam, but that's not why we're forbidden from being there. It's because it's a zone for industrial use. And even though you can sell liquor in an industrial zone, the city said you can't sell cannabis in an industrial zone, period. And that's not something you can go to the Board of Variance on. And these bylaws were all written by Vision Vancouver, which was totally destroyed in the last municipal election. They were written when Harper was still Prime Minister, when legalization was not anything we expected to happen soon. And they wrote them to regulate medical marijuana dispensaries in the context of it still being illegal federally. Right. And I thought the current city council would revisit these bylaws and go, well, it's legal now, and we're a new city council. We're not the same party anymore. Let's look at this stuff and maybe make some changes. And they've refused to do that so far. And we're not asking for like crazy special treatment. If they just treated us the same as liquor stores, that'd be fine. Even though we should be less strict than liquor stores because they're not, we're a lot less harmful. But even just being the same would be fine as a starting point. But it's not just us. Like I was saying, Weeds has been closed. A lot of places have been closed. And the ones that are still open are still selling like illicit cannabis or whatever you want to call it, gray market, free market cannabis, right? At Thurlow, we're still selling the same weed. But because we have a development permit, we're allowed to keep doing that until eventually we get everything set up with the province and the city. And then we got to start selling the LP weed, which I don't want to do either. Like, I totally don't want to sell that stuff. And it would mean we have to cut off most of our medical patients who rely on suppositories and extracts and capsules and things like that. We'd have to start selling what I've seen, very low quality, very overpriced cannabis that you can't, like, we take pride in selecting what cannabis we sell and making sure we've got high quality product and knowing what it is. When you operate within the legal system, you get a bunch of weed. You don't really know what it is. I was reading one article about the woman whose store shut down in New Brunswick. She just gets a list of strain names and a list of prices. And she doesn't even know how much THC or CBD or anything about this stuff other than the name and the price. And she's now shut down her store and says, I'm losing thousands of dollars every day. I can't afford this anymore. So you buy cannabis and, it's got 6% THC and no CBD. It's like, I can't sell this. Nobody wants this. It was packaged in August last year or something.
Yeah, garbage.
Like how, so I tell people, look, if there was if the legal system was working really well, there was 50 stores open in Vancouver, they all had the same or better selection and quality and pricing than I do, but I couldn't be part of it for some reason and I had to shut down, I'd be fine with that. I don't really need to sell marijuana. Like, I didn't get into this so I could have a weed shop. I like having it, but for me, it's not about that. I just want it to be available. But to shut us down in an opioid crisis, we're in the downtown east side. We do a ton to get free cannabis out to people who need it. And then they're shutting us down when they have nothing better to replace us with.
Maniacal.
It's going to cause a lot of harm.
It's really fucking ugly and stupid as far as these idiots at city.
And it's frustrating, City Hall, the current city council, they voted unanimously, all the parties in there voted unanimously to support the destigmatization of drug users and to support a safe supply for drug users. And they're really talking about opiates more when they have that conversation. And, I believe in those things, but how are we going to destigmatize and make a safe supply for opiate users if we're still stigmatizing and shutting down cannabis dispensaries? That does not make any sense at all.
No.
And so
they're
it's
addicted
a lot of
to the stigma. The stigma's been going on a very long time, and generations have been faced with it. And, the certain stigmas for cannabis apply kind of whenever a citizen wants it to apply. They can just, they have a pick it out of the hat what they're against. Right, if they are against you in any reason, then take advantage of it.
There's complaints about the smell of cannabis growing in some of these rural communities where the LPs have got fields of cannabis or barns of cannabis growing, and cannabis can smell. And I understand not everybody likes that smell, but if you ever drive out to any of these areas, you smell manure in the air nonstop.
Yeah.
They complained about the smell of our cannabis smoke in the west end of Vancouver, but in East Vancouver for over 15 years, the smell of death hung over the whole area from the chicken processing plant, chicken rendering plant. Yeah, and that was a huge for years. The city council never took it seriously, never really cared.
No.
And so a lot of this, it's about people just not, I've lived in apartments and in the city, and there's smells you may not like, neighbors cooking spicy food, people putting on perfume in the elevator and leaving it reeking like perfume, all those things. And, cannabis, I think cannabis smells great, obviously, but...
Well, unfortunately, because cannabis was illegal for so long, people could complain about it because it was illegal. Yeah, right. But now they still are geared to being very comfortable complaining about cannabis, right? And your use of it and where you should do it and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's just fucking sad. Here we are, as adults, able to grow 4 plants, a pitiful number of plants at very least. Yeah, there's no fucking seeds. They have no seeds for us.
Well,
They have no clones.
You can't really get, they're hard to get, and if you do get seeds from the LPs, they're very expensive to get a couple of them.
Yeah, it's
And,
just ludicrous. So, no, a pretty sad rollout here, and I'm not too sure where we're all headed with it. But was your neighborhood always zoned industrial?
It's like that from the beginning, yeah. Although we never, interestingly, just before they started bringing in the bylaws, like about a year before, the city staff came to us and said, look, you guys need to get a variance for your building to be able to do retail sales in an industrial zone. And that's not a big deal. Here's some paperwork, fill it out. So we fill it all out, and then they tell us, okay, we got your permit. It's at the city, come and get it. And we go to get it, and we see it there. This is a couple of years ago. And then they say, oh, we're not going to give it to you, we're going to mail it to you. So our staff member takes a photo of it. And then they don't mail it to us. And we call and they say, oh, actually, we're not going to give you that anymore because now we're doing these bylaws. And so we're going to do the bylaws instead. So they'd already approved us to do business in an industrial zone before they had any bylaws. When there was only like 4 or 5 dispensaries at this time in the city. And then right at the last minute, they said, oh, actually, we're not going to do that. Instead, you have to go through this other process, which forbids you from being here.
Oh, my God.
And this industrial zoning, like I said, it doesn't apply to liquor stores. It doesn't apply to anything else. And our block, when we moved there, it was pretty industrial, right? There was a lot of, like, some of the things that are there now are all these shops. But for a while, it was a big, Acme Labs had a big thing. And they had all these mining samples on their property, and there's a lot of industrial type stuff. But now it's all retail. There's a beer store, pizza store that opened right across the street about 6-7 months ago. There's a whole bunch of other cafes and small businesses that have opened up on the street in the last year or so. And really, it's a retail block now. But they could either, I mean, it would be easy for the city council to either change it so that you're not totally banned from industrial zones, or they could just add industrial and other purposes to our block. There's a lot of things they could do. We also have a community center around the corner, but I said they like us, and I'm confident we could get through the Board of Variance about that community center. But it's this industrial zone aspect that's just a big problem. And the 150 meter, 300 meter thing, that doesn't affect us. But if they change that, it would help a lot of other places stay open that have also had to shut down. I think some of the cannabis cultures, that was the issue, was being too close.
300 meters is a long
to a
way.
School. It is, and when it's a circle, it's a really long way, right? I mean, when you double the radius of a circle, you
600 meters.
Could square the area, right? It's a lot of area, anyways, is being covered
geometry.
by this. It's a big problem, and they're having a meeting at Vancouver City Council in a couple of days. To one of the NPA councillors, Rebecca Bly, has got a motion to get staff to look at how they can get more dispensaries into the downtown east side, because the bylaws they have now forbid you from being anywhere in the downtown east side except on Hastings and Main Streets. And both of those streets, I mean, so we're in the downtown east side on Hastings, but we can't do it because we're industrial. And there's so many community centers and schools on Hastings and Main that basically the whole downtown east side is a no-go zone for dispensaries.
Yeah. The place that needs it the most.
Yeah, and when they put that in, the staff were basically telling the councilors, this is a vulnerable community. We don't want them being preyed on by these marijuana dealers. They got enough drugs down there already. But it's the opposite, right? That they need people in the West End. Maybe they can afford to spend $30 a gram or whatever, right? But people in the downtown east side cannot, and they need cheap, high quality, accessible cannabis and extracts. And they should really be subsidizing that. The city should be giving Neil Magnuson's cannabis substitution program. They should be giving him a couple of grand every week to buy cannabis from us and redo it and give it away, right? It's easy to talk, but it's hard to walk the walk.
Well, it's easy
for
to
the city.
It's just easy to have a meeting.
It's easy to just prohibit stuff and send the cops in.
They don't do anything else. They're hell-bent on doing nothing, right? That's the whole point of being a fucking civil politician here. Parks board people too. Do as little as you possibly can. Because with 420 for an example, the city, given the right by the fucking Supreme Court of British Columbia to do whatever they want around cannabis, you can license a dispensary, you could license every vendor. One day. How many pieces of paper? How many vendors? We have 500 pieces of paper is all you need.
Easy to do.
Could have easily done that. Gotten a cut. Charged a bit, gotten a cut from the day. But no, you didn't do that. You could have. You could easily waive the smoke fucking thing. The
They absolutely
smoke
have
ban.
that power
They do.
to change those. To waive the power to give us a
You
permit.
could, but they didn't do that because they would have to do something then. There would have to be something done now. But if you ban something, you don't have to do anything.
The park board's
Right.
putting on a free public concert at Sunset Beach Park this summer. They did it last year. They're doing it again this year. They're saying, oh, how wonderful it is to have free outdoor concerts in the park, and it's classical music. And I think part of that is, classical music is okay for our parks, but hip hop, oh, that stuff's a bit too urban for our parks. We don't want that. Right? Urban, exactly. And I mean,
Especially singing about cannabis.
I mean, it's going to cost the park board a lot more to put on that event than it does to put on 420 because we cover all the costs for 420. So the park board pays nothing for 420, but they're going to be paying a lot of money to put on this other free concert in the park that they happen to like, and they're all tweeting how proud. And I'm not against them putting on free concerts in the park. I think that's fine. I don't mind them putting on a free event. I think that's great. But it's just the hypocrisy of hating on us so much, and then we're doing a free concert of our own. It's going to be lovely. Is just not cool.
So Melissa DeGenova, what the fuck? I think Freddie Pritchard was dogging her, and she said, "Well, the 420 people should comply with the rules." And I thought, well, I'm not sure that that's her role, really, to be telling us what to do as much as the people coming to her for some sort of resolve to their concerns, right? So shouldn't she be finding out what our concerns are and doing something like that in the future rather than going that we must comply to the rule?
Well, Melissa Genova's made it clear that she doesn't want 420 anywhere in the city, right? I mean, she's tweeted at me, and I've said, well, where could we go? You want to follow the rules? There isn't anywhere. Well, maybe another city would be where you should go. And well, that's not a solution.
This is what she says to 100,000 people in her city. Not her city, but
I know what you mean. And
come on. Why are we saddled with these kind of people that fucking jump on a rule and fucking
we don't
never
vote. That's why we're saddled with crappy politicians, because the Vancouver electoral turnout is very low, and the people in the West End vote a lot more than the people in the East Vancouver do, and that's why the West End parks get much better treatment and are more important, and they treat us like that, is because they don't see our community as a voting community, and they're probably right. I mean, election turnouts in Vancouver elections are very low, right? It was like 30 or 40% or something last time, 30%, I think. So, in that by-election last year when we were trying to get Watermelon elected, the overall turnout was about 10%, under 10%. So, I mean, if you get a committed minority in the city that we're going to vote together and take action, you could take over the city. And unfortunately, that's what's already happened with the right wing and with the developers who really control a lot of the parties and the cannabis community. I mean, we have a voice, maybe, but we're not considered a powerful group at City Hall. And we're considered strong in that we do what we want and we push stuff, but not that we necessarily generate votes, I guess.
Huh. Well, I don't know what the fuck you have to do in this world.
And again, you do get people elected. I mean, I've been in the NDP since a long time, over 20, 15 years. How long have I been in the NDP? 2003. 16 years I've been in the NDP. Sorry, it took me a minute to remember when I joined the NDP. 2003, I've been to conventions in every province. We passed drug policy and cannabis resolutions in pretty much every province in the NDP. BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, New Brunswick, and Yukon. We passed resolutions, and they all get ignored. You try to work within the system. If the BC NDP was following the drug policy that we passed at conventions on marijuana and other issues, they would have decriminalized all drug use in the province. They would have put in fair and responsible cannabis legislation. And so you try to work within the system and elect people, and then you get them into power after a lot of work, and they turn their backs on you. I mean, the BC NDP has been... I mean, they could be worse. In Ontario, they're shutting down overdose prevention sites, and in Alberta, they're defunding them and stuff. So, I mean, we're better than that. But, a few overdose prevention sites does not like an ideal drug policy make, right? People are calling, all the health experts in BC are saying we got to decriminalize possession of all drugs. And in BC, we can't even decriminalize possession of marijuana. right?
Yeah.
They haven't even decriminalized possession of illicit cannabis, and we should be decriminalizing all drug users in every way. And so it's
No, it's ludicrous
frustrating.
how we see it from such a different point of view somehow. Like, and if any sense of reason is out there that they don't, right? Very suspicious. They have an agenda, and they show what it is, right? They have a fucking agenda around this shit. People have been taking advantage of cannabis since the beginning of taking advantage of shit, but they're just so addicted to it. And this whole legalization is just nothing but a program to figure out how to make as much fucking money off it as you can.
I do think we're winning. I mean, I just think it's a big, long battle, and that we've still got a long way to go. But I mean, I think we have accomplished a lot. That's Jeremiah calling me there. I think we have accomplished a lot in terms of changing attitudes on cannabis and normalizing cannabis, and even with other drugs, we still got a lot of work to do, but we're changing the attitudes a lot. But it's still like decades ahead. You'd think, okay, Trudeau's going to legalize. They legalize it. Hey, we're sorry about that whole prohibition thing. We're going to fix all that. Instead, it's not like that at all. And, we should be working on legalizing psychedelics and mushrooms, and legalizing proper access to opiates, and dealing with coca leaf and stimulants better, and all these things. And instead, we're still arguing about cannabis. It just seems like we should be past that by now.
Yeah, that's so people don't go towards their fucking cocaine and heroin debacle that's going on out there in the world. I have a question around the fentanyl issue. Where's all the heroin gone?
Heroin's not so available anymore. Went the same place that the opium has gone to, basically, right? I mean,
Merck and Bayer and Pfizer took it all.
Well, and then
for their opioids.
I mean, prohibition. It's just more profitable and easier to smuggle fentanyl than it is to smuggle heroin, and it's more profitable and easier to smuggle heroin than it is to do that with opium. And since the penalties are about the same, regardless, getting caught with a kilo of opium or a kilo of heroin is going to be in big trouble either way. But the profit margin on that heroin is way greater, and on fentanyl, it's incredible.
Something's up here. I think all the opium's being bought up by the pharmaceutical companies.
Oh, maybe.
And they are covering their tracks because it doesn't, like really. Why would you bother? Why do you want to fuck? It makes no sense to me, this whole thing. Why do you cut it with a thing that's going to kill your fucking your buyers? Like, aren't you eventually going to run out of people to sell to, and you're out of business, and all the billions are gone? What the fuck? How does that work?
I don't know if people have got a long-term business plan in mind when they're doing that. I think they're looking to maximize your profits in the short term, right? And why do people sell spice instead of real marijuana? Spice kills people, right? People smoke those fake weed things, and their lungs bleed, and they get killed. And why would you sell that? But maybe it's just so much more profitable than getting real weed to people.
Yeah, I guess so. But I don't know. What do you think? What do we got to do here to get out from under this shit, Dana? Come on.
Well, I mean, I've got a lot of projects coming. I think we need more civil disobedience and more people breaking the laws, and that's why I'm really torn about the fact that we didn't force them to make arrests at our Hastings location before closing down. Right at this minute, as we're speaking, in Maple Ridge, there's a group that was setting up an overdose prevention site in a park at Maple Ridge. To allow people to come and inject. They're all health workers. They've got all their stuff there. And the RCMP have surrounded it and told them they're going to arrest them if they keep doing this. They've already had people come in to inject and to be safe. And I don't know what's going to happen with it, but it's happening right now. And, to me, it's all intertwined. I mean, these are somewhat separate issues, but to me, they're also all interconnected. And cannabis and opiates and the war on drugs and all these things. And cannabis is a big part of the solution to that, but so is a safe opiate supply, and so is, safe access to entheogens and psychedelics and all these things. And but I'm going to try to make that happen over this year. I think that we're going to start doing. I got the drug testing thing going on. You can get your street drugs analyzed through our service. We're going to probably put that into our dispensary location at 880 East Hastings. Since we don't have any cannabis there, we can let people come down and get their street drugs tested.
That'd
and maybe do
handy.
some other stuff. I'd like to start working on making psychedelics and entheogens, like mushrooms, more available. trying to make kratom more available. And if you don't know about kratom, you can Google it, Kratom. But it's a herb that's a nice substitute for opioids. You can drink it as a tea, and it's very effective for opiate users who want to reduce their opiate use. And all these things got a lot of.
Well, that's a pretty good endeavor. Well, it's been a long time. We've been at this fight, I gotta say. Holy shit.
I know, I hope you'll be seeing some kind of end in our lifetimes now. I'm not so sure. But
yeah, it's taken a change for the odd, really.
Denver just decriminalized all entheogenic plants today or yesterday, I believe. So possession or cultivation of magic mushrooms, of peyote, of iboga. Huh? It's not legal, but they passed a thing. They told the police, don't bug anybody doing this. The same way that they did it with cannabis in the beginning, and they were one of the first cities to do that in the U.S., and then they got Colorado to go, and then now the whole U.S. is going. And another city also, somewhere in California, I think, also passed, maybe Oakland, also passed something to decriminalize entheogens. Or I think maybe just mushrooms there. In Oakland, it was just only... Yeah, Oakland just did psilocybin mushrooms. So it's just starting in the U.S., and that's, those were the first things that were started that led to all the cannabis changes. And
well, that didn't take all that long either for them to start thinking about that after seeing exactly.
I'm going to be selling mushrooms in some form before the end of the year for sure. Hopefully within the next month or two. I want to do a dispensary. We're just trying to get it all set up. This is kind of a setback losing our spot on Hastings here, but I still think a psilocybe dispensary of some kind could be very effective and could also be successful. It took them 10 years to finally get us at East Hastings. So if we can run a psilocybe dispensary for 10 years somewhere, and then we're just complaining about how expensive and low quality the legal psilocybe is and how the legal mushrooms aren't good enough, but that would be a better conversation to be having, I guess, right? But
yeah. Well, those mushrooms are a public safety and health issue.
Mushrooms are great. I mean, it's like cannabis. At a smaller dose, it's incredibly safe. At higher doses, if you eat too much or whatever, you can feel uncomfortable and maybe get a little freaked out if you don't know what you're expecting. But that's just with the dosage. But at the right dosage, in fact, a lot of studies and things claim that mushrooms are safer than cannabis. And I'm not, it depends how you use the word safer and what that really means, I guess. But like cannabis, it's pretty much impossible to overdose, to die from an overdose of mushrooms. You could eat mushrooms until the cows come home, and you're going to get really high, but you're never going to have so much that you die or whatever. It's just not going to happen, right? Just like cannabis.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not too sure what the future of cannabis here in Canada is. What do you think?
I think it's going to keep growing and expanding, and I think the legal system is going to start to crumble in on itself. I think it's probably going to happen slower than I would like, but I don't think it's sustainable, what they've built. There's too many places going under. There's not enough growers. They don't have enough in place to make it work properly, and so this is not sustainable in the long run. So I'm hoping maybe after the next federal election that they open things up a bit. But probably it's just going to continue on with this half-assed kind of thing for a couple more years at least, where they just try to implement this terrible system they've created. But I don't think it's going to work. I think that cannabis is very difficult to prohibit, as we've seen. And it's equally difficult to prohibit it through taxes and those kind of controls as it would be through outright prohibition. Yeah. And cannabis could be a good, they could be a tax revenue maker. It could be benefit, but not the high taxes they've got on it now, and not having it be so expensive and so overpriced and regulated. So I'm hoping it just gets better. When they legalized alcohol after Prohibition, which only lasted a very short time compared to cannabis prohibition, it took decades after they legalized alcohol before we got to a system like now where you could have bright labels and marketing, and they're still going over the rules and changing things. So I think we got decades ahead. Yeah. But I think we're kind of over the hump, I feel like it's only going to get better in Canada from now on. I hope anyways. I don't feel like the laws are going to get worse than they are now. I think it's just they're only going to get better, but I think it's going to be a very slow and challenging process.
Do you think the LPs will continue to sell marijuana they're buying in big loads out of Kelowna?
Yeah, that's hilarious. Hey, that big scandal, and that the RCMP were covering for Tweed and Metrum. And when did the RCMP ever cover for cannabis people?
Holy cow!
Or do anything to try to
Juxtaposition.
sound like, yeah, like what we're talking about is that there was a window of time where the licensed producers were allowed to buy seeds and starting material, clones, from medical growers. And the idea was that there wasn't any real source. They'd permitted all these people to grow weed, but they didn't have any legal source for them to get it. So they just waived because no legal, you have to import it from Holland and have some other country wave their wand over it first to make it legal, then we can accept their thing on it. But instead, Health Canada said, all right, we're going to wave our wand over all the weed that all the medical users have been growing and say we don't know where they got their seeds from either, right?
Yeah.
No one sold, there was no seeds around for them, but we're going to say any seeds and cuttings they've got are legal and let the LPs buy them to start their crops. And then Tweed and Metrum, which are now one company under Canopy, they bought 700 kilos of bud from growers because it came in hockey bags, in Ziploc bags, and the RCMP said there was no seeds, and you don't ship cuttings in bags like that in plastic, in Ziploc bags, right? That has to be dried bud. And Tweed lied about it to the media and said, we invited the RCMP to come and inspect it, and it's all just a mix-up. And the RCMP in their own internal thing was saying they did not invite us. It was the plane they chartered called us saying, hey, they've got 700 kilos of weed here, and we're just a little nervous. Can you confirm for us that this is legal? And then the cops came down and said, well, the permit thing here says seeds and live plants, and these are hockey bags filled with bud. So we're taking it. And I don't like if cops taking weed from anybody, right? I mean, but when the police wouldn't talk about it, they refused to give the reporter any information for 5 years until he just finally got the appeal through and forced them to hand over the information. And it turns out that some of the cops wanted to put out the truth, and they were mad. Tweed's lying, and we got to clear our names, and they're implying that we, didn't do this right, and we're the RCMP. We got to stand up for ourselves, right? But they were saying that it was clearly buds, that Tweed was lying. And they didn't want to bring it up because it would embarrass Tweed, and Tweed was about to go public with their stock in that month, so it might have hurt their stock offering. And they didn't want to embarrass Health Canada and make legalization look bad because they had just legalized, cannabis or just started this program. They didn't want to embarrass Health Canada. And so it all got shut down. And it's just not. And now when you bring it up, the Tweed defenders are like, well, it was 5 years ago. I mean, come on. And it's like, well, it's only because we didn't get to hear about it at the time.
Yeah.
You successfully covered it up. And it just a lot of bending the rules. And on the Metrum board of directors was Norm Inkster, who was the former head of the RCMP for decades. So This is the RCMP not wanting to embarrass a company who their former boss is on the board of. I mean, that's at least the appearance of conflict, if not an actual, very real conflict of interest. So, a lot of bullshit going on.
It's hard not to embarrass Health Canada.
Then, at the same time, some Indigenous guy's got 30 grams or 50 grams of weed in his backpack. He gets 10 months in jail. Right, that's the hypocrisy. That if you're a rich, well-connected roller, a high roller type person, you can bend the rules, you can break the rules, and the RCMP will cover up for you. But if you're a poor person or a brown person or an Indigenous person, then you get the full force of the law put against you.
You going to jail.
And if you're somewhere in the middle like me, then you might get some hassles, but not as the same thing. But so it's not really about like me and my dispensary. It's about this massive national thing going on that's really, punishing a lot of people that should not be punished.
Over a substance that, I might add, doesn't hurt you.
Yeah, people have been tweeting that they didn't get paid also, that the people who supplied that weed to Tweed never got their money. I don't know how, I can't speak to the truth of that. Somebody's posting that in the comments, and I've seen a few tweets like that, and so that's...
I'll bet they didn't get their money, but I'm not too sure why those people at Tweed are, still alive.
Yeah, well, Tweed should have paid them regardless. It was their fault that it got seized, not the people sending it, but I don't know what kind of contract. But they were planning on reselling that weed. I mean, it seems very clear to me. I can't prove this statement, but why else would they want to buy a bunch of dried buds? They're going to resell it, or they're going to make extracts or do something with it. And we know that Bonify was caught doing exactly that, buying street dangerous, untested marijuana from the street and reselling it to unknowing customers, and they didn't even lose their license either.
No.
We know that Metrum was caught
Or
putting
investigated.
microblutanol on their crops knowingly and hiding the buckets of it or whatever in the ceiling when Health Canada came by. They didn't lose their permit or get fined or have anybody get fired or anything like that.
No ramification whatsoever. Now, if you and I had got caught in Kelowna with 1,500 pounds of fucking weed, what do you think would happen to us?
There's people now getting busted, for that. They just busted someone for like even much smaller quantities, and absolutely, and
Unbelievable.
I mean, the solution is to make a fairer system for everybody, right? But it's especially frustrating in Tweed. I mean, I got some people who work for Tweed who I like and respect, but Tweed and Bruce Linton especially, he was in the news on Fox News recently, and he was saying, "Oh, you can't trust the street weed. It's got this and that and fentanyl in it." And everyone, of course, is like, "There's no fentanyl in marijuana. That's a lie that keeps on getting repeated." And he did kind of walk it back afterwards, after going on Fox News and saying it on the most popular news station in the U.S. He did privately, and other people have tweeted, "Oh, he didn't mean to say that, and he was misunderstood," or whatever. But Bruce Linton has really said a lot of terrible stuff about the cannabis movement, about they lobbied to not allow it to be grown outside. He told the Senate, letting us grow cannabis outside would be the stupidest thing you could ever do. Kids will fly drones in and harvest the buds with the drone and then fly away, and you won't be able to stop them, and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, he's got a history of fear-mongering because it benefits his financial interest, right? That it benefits them to be terrified of dispensary weed. It benefits them to not allow outdoor growing. And
they have an interest in Canada's first outdoor grow license.
Well, then they
48 North.
But I mean, they spent a lot of money building these big indoor facilities, and ultimately, if our hemp farmers could grow high potency cannabis and then harvest the resin and make extracts out of it, all those indoor grow facilities would be useless, and the price would crash drastically, which is what would be great. It would be great to see that happen. That's how I'd love my dispensary to go out of business, because weed is so cheap and so plentiful that people don't want to come here anymore because I can't compete with, that'd be great. I would love that to shut down because of that.
Or just have a nice little
or just
quiet business.
Yeah, or to have to, I mean, I mean, I'm not, if it was all legal and good, I'd rather do other stuff than continue to sell cannabis. I'd rather start selling other banned stuff.
Never been in it for the money. The whole object was really to get it legalized so the price could come down to reality, not this overinflated
people
prohibition.
say, like, oh, when you sell booths at 420, it means it's not a protest because you're making money. But the thing is, it's not like that at all. 420, and our dispensaries too, but 420, which was the first way we really sold cannabis openly in the city. You could go to 420 and you could buy weed at 420. And there would be people set up with tables, or even just in the early days with David Malmo, where we'd gather in a circle and dealers would line up and buyers would line up and you'd do your thing, right? But it created a safe space for that to happen. And that, to me, is what it's about, a safe place where you can talk about, buy, sell, and share and enjoy cannabis. And that's what this is, this building we're in here. It's a safe place where we know, and it hasn't always been safe. The cops have come in here many times and dragged people out and arrested and tried to shut it down and succeeded in shutting it all down for a while. But we build these safe spaces for our community to be able to access it. That's how I think of my dispensary. I think of it as a business because we got to make a profit to be able to stay there. But I really think of it as a safe space for the cannabis community to access cannabis, to feel comfortable. And I know, in the early days of Hemp BC, sometimes you get Americans coming up, people who have spent their whole life like hiding their cannabis use. And it's kind of like somebody who's been in the closet their whole life and not been able to express their sexuality to their family. Then they come here and there's marijuana everywhere and we're all smoking joints nonstop. And some people are just like, they start to cry, or they're coming home. I can finally, it's like in a place where I feel comfortable, when I don't have to hide this part of me, and where I can. And it's, not everybody comes in and starts weeping or whatever, but I've seen that from people, and especially in the earlier days when there wasn't any options in the U.S. like that, and where they couldn't go to Colorado or Denver, in like the late 90s, mid-late 90s, when things were really getting going here, and some people would have very strong, powerful emotional reactions to being in a place that is just accepting like that, and it's just, I want to be able to keep doing that.
Yeah. And that's the way it should be, in my estimation. I couldn't do this for all these years if I thought cannabis was hurting people in any way. Well, I couldn't do that. Why would I? It's not, like, and there is no harm. To me, that's the issue. That's the issue here. This does not cause harm, so
it actually causes benefits.
It needs no rules.
Thing, it causes benefits. The only rules around cannabis should be that it is what you say it is, like other food products. You're not putting it doesn't have bugs in it or pesticides in it. And Health Canada is has not accomplished that one aspect. Their own weed is not even, they haven't even guaranteed that the weed they sell, and that should be the only job. I would like a system where anybody, I mean, the price should drop so low that it's not everybody wants to grow and sell cannabis. But I think you should be able to get in the market, and there should be some system where you've got to get it tested, either mandatory testing or spot testing. And if you fail those tests in a serious way, maybe you lose that right to grow cannabis because you've been shown to be selling crappy weed or whatever, right? But any licensing, it should be like a $50 a year license to sell cannabis or something like that. Or if you have a license, maybe it shouldn't be at all, right? But if it is going to be licensed, it should be something that's entirely accessible that anybody could get, just covers the costs of running the bureaucracy or something very simple. But instead, it's treated so terribly, so harshly, and so much.
Well, every step along the way that they've created is worth money, right? That was the whole plan here, was to absolutely make sure that the police got as much money as they possibly could out of this transition, and the health industry, and more research, and every municipality had a fucking meeting about it, and give the right to everyone to ban the use, ban the fucking site, ban.
Bruce Linton gave this talk at an event about a year ago, and it's on YouTube, and you can watch it if you want. And it's about it's an event about breaking down boundaries, and like it's like a conference about boundaries and breaking boundaries. So they invite the marijuana guy, thinking, well, he's going to talk about how breaking boundaries and cannabis. And Bruce Linton gets up and he says, "I'm going to blow your mind. I'm going to tell you why boundaries are good. I'm going to tell you why boundaries are good." And he says boundaries are good because we had this boundary or barrier. Sorry, barriers are good. Not boundary, barriers. Why a conference about breaking barriers? Why barriers are good? There was a barrier from the past. We don't really know why, but cannabis was banned for some stupid reason a long time ago, and that was bad. But this barrier is actually good because it creates a vast reservoir of untapped wealth, which can now be drawn upon to your benefit. So that's why barriers are good. And a lot of people apply to get these permits to be able to grow cannabis, but it costs a couple of $1 million, and you have to have a lot of things to make it happen. Not everybody had that. So a lot of folks applied, only a few got them. You can see why I like barriers now, he says, right? And it's the most white privilege speech of somebody to make, where he's like, we don't know why it was illegal, but now it just made a lot of money for us. And and he's so proud of because he's being contrarian and talking about boundaries or barriers and all this stuff. And it was just kind of the epitome of I think all the problems with legalization, and that legalization should be about apologizing for harm, and it should be about trying to make it right to the individuals and the communities really that have been most harmed by cannabis prohibition and by the broader war on drugs. And we're trying to shut those people out.
Man, they don't want to hear that, eh? They don't want to have nothing to do around that.
It's that Oakland has been doing a bit of that there and talking about that. And it's hard to kind of fully manifest that, but I mean, there's definitely ways of doing it that are better than others. And
it's funny too, though. You just don't hear a voice in government ever speaking about these kinds of things too much. Opposition, they will.
Every politician poses with alcohol, right? And they still do. Even ones that don't drink, right? I mean, Harper wasn't a big drinker. I know some of the guys at the NDP, they don't really, a lot of them drink a lot of alcohol. Some of them don't drink at all, but they still got to pose with that glass of wine and say, support BC wine. They got to pose with the beer to be the guy you want to drink a beer with. But not one politician, federal, municipal, or provincial across the country has posed with legal marijuana. Not one has had a joint saying, hey, it's legal. Come to Canada. Enjoy our legal marijuana. I'm here with a joint. But they'll pose with a glass of wine and say, drink BC wine. Come to BC and drink our wine. And I think that shows the stigma, right? That they're still, even though it's legal and they were willing to campaign on legalizing it and to talk about it and admit maybe they smoked it in the past, But none of them, not one politician has come out now and said, oh, hey, by the way, now that it's legal, I'm going to let you know I smoke cannabis. And I just want people to know about me, and this is the thing that I do, or whatever, right? Like, not one person has said that. I mean, I guess there was one, but he had kind of come out beforehand, is Nathan Erskine Smith, a Liberal MP in Ontario, who did say that he's a cannabis user. He still wouldn't pose with a plant or with a joint or anything like that, but he's like a good guy, he's coming out, but it's not that level of stigma. I read a thing, somebody tweeted on the Twitter there about, it was a woman saying that she had an easier time coming out to her parents about being lesbian than she did about being a psychedelic and a drug user. And I thought about that, and I thought, I bet that's actually true. Like, in our society, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people could come out to their parents. I think most LGBT people in Canada, their parents probably know that they're part of that community, right? They don't have to hide it from them. Some do. But how many drug users' parents know that they take drugs on a regular basis, or even smoke weed, or that they go tripping on MDMA? None. You don't tell your parents. That's something you're still stigmatized about, right? And I think that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that, but I guarantee that less people tell their parents about their drug use than tell them about their sexual orientation or their gender identity and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
and
that
so
makes
it shows,
sense.
that stigma is still there, right?
No, tons of stigma. In any which way you can fucking get stigma. There's been like a sale on it since they legalized cannabis. No, you can't. So, yeah, we got a long way to go, as far as I can tell. But I don't know which way to go necessarily anymore. Holy fuck. It's crazy.
I think we got to keep on doing. I do say, I thought, I thought with so many dispensaries in the city that I thought it'd be harder. And it did take them a long time and multiple court decisions. And there's still, they had to allow, there's still a bunch of places operating with these development permits. And the crush is going to come, the pressure's going to come on us now over the next year to get that through, stop selling our dirty street weed, start selling that fabulous tweed and Metrum stuff, right? But we have still accomplished a lot. But I wish, I just wish things were a little different in Vancouver here, and that we had a friendlier environment. I don't think a lot of people realize or really know what's going on either, or what's happening, or it's a lot of confusion as well.
What did we ever do to them? What is it?
We've only benefited this city, man. We should be, they should be thanking us and naming streets after us and stuff. Vancouver has been so benefited. We've saved the city a ton of money, because if the police were still enforcing the cannabis laws like they were in the 90s in this city, it would be hugely expensive, right? We've brought in, I don't know how many billions in tourist revenue to BC and Canada, promoting BC bud and cannabis legalization.
How much money's come into the communities through the manufacture and sale of this?
Well, even this whole money laundering thing they're talking about now, right? All this money laundering and all this money. And I'm thinking, well, we know that the domestic weed industry in BC was worth $7 billion. And all that money, money laundering just means you're spending money that you got outside the legal system, right? You can't help but launder drug money. There's no way not to launder it, right? If you get it and even if you declare it as income, you gotta eat and pay taxes on it, it doesn't, you don't have to run it through a casino. If you sell some weed and then use that money to buy some groceries to feed yourself, that's laundering money, right? And we've always said, if all the weed growers and dealers in BC just quit, the province's economy would collapse, right? That's a huge industry equivalent to forestry or tourism or any of these kind of things. And so this money laundering, I'm not really sure if the money, they're a bit vague about where it's coming from. It seems to me drug money is the main thing. It might also be just rich Chinese people trying to get their money out of the country, in which case it's not really illicit money other than that China doesn't want them taking it out, right? But I don't know why we should be caring about that and that kind of money laundering, because that's not really our thing. But even the drug stuff, you're not going to stop, you want to stop, God, I got to turn off my phone. If you want to stop people laundering money, don't let there be so much money to be laundered, which means legalizing drugs and ending prohibition and all that stuff.
Oh no, they'd have to do some work. They don't want to work. Let's ban it. Done. Let's go for a beer.
What's Freddie saying there? I beg to differ. I say they accomplished a lot. I can't read this whole statement. Well, they have definitely shut down. The city's been effective in shutting down dispensaries. There's still a lot left. There's more cannabis access in Vancouver now, than there was when I opened my dispensary 10 years ago, right?
Yeah,
There's not as much as there was 2 years ago when we had or 3 years ago when there was 100 dispensaries in the city. We hit a high water mark. But at the same time, I don't think it's like we're worse off than we were before. Like there's still way more access, way more places in the city to get it than when we opened in 2008, right? That's not debatable. But it's and whether it's gonna what the future holds, I don't know. But I do feel we were very successful in changing the face of Vancouver. I just wish we were back at that 100 dispensary mark and not down to the 25 and dropping number right we're at now.
Safety in numbers and all.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that's it. I'm actually busier. I mean, now that I've lost Hastings, I guess, but our one at Thurlow has gotten quite a bit busier. Partly because you guys closed down and you're competitors and friendly competitors. I don't want to get busier by being the last guy standing. That's not the goal, right? That's not safe, and that's not what I ever tried to do. But I wish more places were open and that this wasn't, and I really feel torn about
the provincial government's got their little task guys are running around with pamphlets. They
I wasn't
got
really
pamphlets.
worried about that. I mean, that stuff was less. It's this contempt of court stuff, that could be quite harsh. And I don't know. I'm gonna keep thinking I should have just kept doing it. I should have told them to come bust me. I should have called their bluff. Worst case, if the worst case scenario was I spend a few nights in jail or something like I can do that. If that would help us stay open or whatever, I'd be happy to do that. But if the worst case scenario is that they shut down our place at Thurlow, I get a month in jail and a $100,000 fine, and they, seize all the rest of our cannabis, and the employees that I employ now can't work anymore, and then it's like, well, I don't know if that's a good idea, right? Like I want to stay open and I want to be strategic, but. It's not like I'm nervous about the idea of getting arrested. It's not like it's all fun and games or whatever, but.
Yeah, they threaten you pretty harsh.
We fought this court thing as far as we could. We're still in court, right? We could still get a favorable decision from the Supreme Court or the Appeal Court of BC. We could still get a favorable decision from the federal court. Either one of those could allow us to reopen again, and if we got one of those, we'd reopen again the next day. But those are probably going to be months, if not years down the line, right? It's hard to say. I mean, the appeal court one, probably within a year, we'll have that dealt with, and maybe, although they didn't give us the stay, so that doesn't necessarily mean the loss either, right? Judges got their own logic to things, right? It doesn't necessarily mean they wouldn't do that. The stay is based on other stuff, right? So it's all part of the issue with the stay was that it's because like we could say, well, it's medical necessity, and they're like, well, there is cannabis access in Vancouver. Maybe it's inconvenient for somebody to have to go 12 blocks to the other shop, but that's hard. You don't really get a medical necessity out of inconvenience, right? So, because there is access. And in a way, the court decision reaffirmed that the ones with development permits are needed, because if they were all shut down too, then I think we probably would have done better in court in a way, because then there would be no access, and then we'd have a better argument. There is no access, but because there is access, our thing could still. I don't know. I hate all that
just
stuff.
A plant, for God's sakes, plant that doesn't hurt you. Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, Freddie, they will have to sell LP weed eventually, but right now there's they're not really legal stores, but stores in Vancouver with a development permit are still selling the same cannabis they were before. But once you get through that process, you're right, they're gonna have to sell LP weed, and I would like it. Like I always say, I'm not against the theory, like an LP or needing a license to produce cannabis. In theory, that's fine with me, but the way they've implemented it is awful, and I'm not going to sell. I'll never sell weed from Tweed or Metrum or these big companies. Not every LP is evil, but they're all part of a terrible system.
Now you just jack the whole fucking thing. Get a license and just sell your own weed. Fuck them. Right? Say, oh no, you said it was okay for Tweed.
Doing that. Just break open the jar, dump out their shitty dried out pot, that in there, use that to make some edible or something. Put a nice gram of some good weed in there.
What are you gonna
do? Back up and then resell it to people, right?
And you would be the busiest retail outlet. Never run out of weed. which would be just astounding to them all.
We're looking in about giving away cannabis from our Hastings location too, because I'm not sure if giving it away counts as a business thing. But
Aren't
you
you
know,
allowed to gift cannabis? These it's not.
you're allowed to give it
government
away.
weed,
You can give away up to 30 grams. You're allowed to possess and give away up to 30 grams. So that's not illicit cannabis. That would be LP
Yes, that's
cannabis,
true.
right?
So you
But
don't-
it's still it's kind of a different kind of thing. But we're thinking about that, or bringing down Neil to do it once a week for the Van Du type thing. You know, he was giving away free cannabis there. Or we're going to keep that space open, and we're going to use it for something. And we're going to keep the harm reduction and cannabis vibe going there as long as we can.
Something will happen. As it always does in our wacky world of cannabis. Cannabis this week. Oh, yeah, for 25 fucking years we've been doing this bullshit, right? This week in cannabis, here's who was nasty to us.
Well, in the earlier days, I mean, it was crazier when Mark was getting busted all the time, and we were fighting over bong shops, and it was very similar, kind of on a smaller scale across the country, but more intense in Vancouver because we were the only real group sort of here doing that kind of stuff. Now it's like a lot of independent places. You hear about someone else getting busted, and, But in the 90s, it was bong shops, people opening bong shops, people getting raided for selling bongs, and the cops would come in and take all the bongs and take away your business license. They had huge business license hearings here to take away Hemp BC's business license after Mark wasn't involved, and it was Sister Icy was there, and they had huge hearings about taking away her license, and eventually they decided they were going to do it, and they shut them down for a while. And actually they came back, and that's an inspiration for us that, shutting down for a while does not necessarily mean you're gone forever, right? This place was reborn again as a cannabis center from Hemp BC to becoming cannabis culture.
Well, got to thank you, Dana, for all the hard work that you have done at that location and have been a shining example of how easy this can be and, bolstering the bravery of others to follow in your footsteps. It's sure helped.
We should if we opened up like 100 dispensaries in Vancouver tomorrow. I mean, that would be great if everybody just reopened again all in once, right? Near my house where I live, I live near Boundary in Hastings, and there's 3 empty spots there. They're all empty. It was the Cannabis Culture one up Hastings near Boundary, the Meta Canna, I think it was called, and then there was the Swede dispensary, and they're all empty, just sitting there empty now. I keep thinking, we should rent one of those ones out and reopen it. And the whole bunch of other landlords say, I've got empty dispensaries. We had a dispensary here, shut down. You want to open a dispensary here? I think, fuck, I'm gonna do it myself, but it'd be great if everyone just reopened again. They couldn't shut us down, right? If there was 100, if there was back to 100, and we all just said we're all not shutting down, they could not stop us, right? But
there'd be a lot of hands thrown up at City Hall.
But it's why they do it one step at a time. And they shut down a few, and they tighten the screw, and they get a few more to shut down, and they do a few more, and then suddenly you're looking around, and you're the last one left. Right? So.
And they have unlimited resources and guns. All right. And they don't mind spending the money, whatever it takes. Right? They'll appeal any decision because it's not their money, it's yours. So on we go, onward and upward. Before we go to, I'd like to certainly acknowledge the sadness in the passing of Tracy Curley in this past week. It was
that was really shocking.
Shocking bit of news. She was a tremendous woman who was, in my memory, was full of life and always had a very positive outlook and was a credit to the cannabis community and the world, for that matter. But yeah, that was just a stunning piece of news.
Yeah, she is a very strong spirit and a true warrior. And I didn't talk to her. I mean, when I was in Ontario, I always saw her, but I didn't really talk to her when I'm in Vancouver that often. We were actually just talking a bit because she was working on the affidavits for the court case coming up. Jerry Martin's case coming up, right? He's got a trial coming, and he wanted me to he's doing stuff about Camp CD and his time in there and all that. And first time I talked to her in a while, and we'd just been going over that a little bit, and then I hadn't heard from her for a bit, and then turned out she had died. And now I'm thinking about her nonstop, right? And like constantly thinking about her and any experiences we had together. Things we did, and it's
Yeah, well, I don't know. life goes on. But holy
it is
cow.
what it is, but it's a real loss to our community. She was a very strong person, and I think had a lot of influence, and people really respected her, and we're seeing a lot of outpouring of love and remembrance for her now, and I've been thinking about her a lot too.
So yeah, that's all you can hope for, is that you go out to the world thinking that you were a good person and spread happy, good thoughts, and remember her well.
Yeah.
So until next time, I hope you all got good weed to smoke like we do here, and thanks a lot to Dana for joining me today.
My pleasure. I'm glad it all worked out for me to be here.
We'll keep fighting here on this end. Thanks to Anil for keeping us live and in focus. And we'll see you next week. I'm Marijuana Man. Peace. And pot.
Hi there, welcome to the 420 Lifestyle Show. I'm Carly Marley. She's taking a dab. Thanks.
We can play the Sick Moose video.
Oh yes, Sick and Moose video. Let's play the Sick and Moose video.
Yeah, so that's my home. That's like